Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Metalocalypse, Army of the Doomstar. So I've watched Metalocalypse since it started. I've been a fan. I saw them live once. I have a t-shirt, which I'm not sure where it is anymore, but if you watch older videos, you can see me wearing it. And I was excited to see this movie, to see them kind of come back after all this time. In fact, I had to pretty much rewatch the entire fourth season, which was a lot of fun, actually, before watching this and the clock opera or whatever. Although I really, and I have to admit something, I'm a big Death Clock fan. I've listened to all the albums, super into them. Did not like the clock opera thing at all. In fact, I barely watched it. I never got very far because I don't like it. I really don't like it at all. I think it's horrible. So I just can't get through it. I'm sorry. I've watched everything else they've done and loved it. It just doesn't do it for me at all. So after watching season 4 and watching that, I was a little nervous. And I was nervous because it's been a while, and they probably, you never know with that kind of a break, a longer break, I think, than the other two shows, like the Venture Brothers did with their movie. But I think this actually turned out pretty well. And in fact, I like this a lot more than Clock Opera in the fact that I like it and could watch it all the way through and stuff. This is basically the kind of culmination of all of Death Clock and the whole idea of Metalocalypse, and that they are a metal band that will bring about the actual apocalypse. This, much like the Venture Brothers movie, is not for new fans at all. It is not designed to be for new fans. That's probably, I think, one of the things about the on-demand way they're doing this that makes sense is that obviously no one's gonna, I don't think people randomly buy movies on demand. I think you kind of have to know what you're doing there. So I think the way this is released sort of works for it with streaming and on demand and things like that. I think this movie really is kind of the best of what you'd want it to be, but it is not a regular episode. I saw some backlash about that, or some criticism, I guess, about that, because the regular episode is more funny and silly, and then there's some stuff, and there's a performance, and lots of people die. Lots of people, like tons and tons of people die, and there's metal music and stuff like that. But it's true, this isn't as funny, and this isn't like your regular episode, but by definition, this isn't. This is the Army of the Doomstar. This is the end of the whole fucking thing. Like, this is the serious thing. So it's like I didn't want, obviously there was not going to be as jokey and silly as it normally is. I think it really worked well with it. This is about basically after the events of the clock opera, which I read the description of, don't worry, I know what happens in it. But after they've got Toki back and the female producer, after they're all at a kind of major funeral and a big event, and Nathan Explosion tries to propose to the producer lady. She turns him down, and he knows he needs to make the Song of Salvation, but he's having a lot of trouble figuring that out. And most of the movie is about them trying to figure out how to write the Song of Salvation, and eventually doing that will then save the world from destruction. And the actual Song of Salvation in this, the actual one, when you finish the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about, is really good. I wish this could be submitted for Oscars. So I really love that song a lot, actually. Added it to a bunch of playlists and stuff. This does feel like the real culmination of a lot of stuff. Like, you could probably do a after the Metalocalypse show or something, but it does feel like kind of the definitive culmination of the whole thing. And it kind of reminds me what I liked about it, particularly music-wise. I always liked how Brendan Smalls did that. This is his kind of feature film sort of debut, or feature animation debut. He did a good job with this. It was also co-directed by Tom Blacka. I love the design, as that's always been great. I love all the violence and all the ridiculous gore and stuff like that. I do think these For the Fan things just play right to that and don't try to be anything else, but I think that is kind of like, that's what you expect from these things. That's what you would want from these things. So I don't think there's anything more want to take from it, to be honest with you. But I do think it shows, what these guys ultimately realized. And when you know that, I saw him talk, Brendan Small, to an interview with Double Toasted, and he talked about, although I used to go on blogs that probably don't exist anymore and figure out who each of the people in Death Clock are in real life are based on. I've always thought Pickles is based on the drummer from Faith No More. Is that right? Yeah, I always thought that. I don't know. Anyway, they're basically Metallica, but how it's kind of the idea of some kind of monster, like a band kind of culminating their emotions, be able to talk to themselves. And I did feel like a lot of metal bands I know who are older, who or metal musicians and stuff who would fight and stuff, are much more in tune with their feelings and stuff. So I think as they get older, are more in tune with their feelings as they get older. And I feel like this is the culmination of them realizing like they can't be the ridiculous rock stars they were for so long and things like that. And I think that is sort of like a perfect end to this whole saga of Deathclock and Metalocalypse. And it's cool that Warner's lets them, Warner's generally sucks a lot right now, but they're letting them do this. If you were into this show and you're like, should I watch this? Absolutely you should. I think it is, exactly what you want from it. It has 2 different albums, a score album and the actual Deathclock album, Deathclock 4, I believe. The amount that Brendan Smalls put into this, which is 2 different albums and a movie, and they're going on tour, which is outrageously expensive, and I would have liked to have gone, but I saw them once, so I can say that, and I have a t-shirt and all those things. This is not for the uninitiated. But if you were watching this and go, oh, I wish I could, just start with Deathclock. It's a great show. I'm surprised how many people don't even know about it now. Most people I brought it up to, they're like, what? A metal band brings up the apocalypse and stuff? It almost feels like harder to review because I think the fun of the show was kind of the format of it, of like, this is the problem. And then the military guy, you hear them go, dun, 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 and then it's like, Murderface thinks he can get plastic surgery, or blah, blah. And like also seeing Mark Hamill again and hearing Malcolm McDowell and hearing the same voices. The only person who wasn't involved, who I didn't know was involved, because I didn't know who he was when I was watching Metalocalypse, it was John Schnepp, who you might know from Collider and the Superman Lives documentary. Did not know he was so involved in Metalocalypse. That was a surprise. This movie is dedicated to him. I honestly, I just think it's a really good movie, and it shows you the ridiculousness, the extreme metal of Deathclock and Metalocalypse, and I also the heavy metal magazine kind of design of it, especially in those like really gory, bloody parts of it. This plays like a magnum and opus thing, but it doesn't. I still think those earlier stuff are maybe easier ports of entry. This is still very, very good and a perfect ending to it, and an appropriate ending to it, by the way. I'm not upset that it is not those episodes, but I am saying, like, if you're like, hey, I would say get used to this. Like, when I watched the Venture Brothers movie, I watched a bunch of Venture Brothers episodes. When I watched this, I watched a bunch of Metalocalypse again. So I'd say get used to these worlds before you just go into them, because I think that really helped that I was like more hyped to watch it. I would recommend the 4th season, but I would recommend all of them. It is a different vibe than that, but it's also like not even pretending to do that at all. Going to the weird metal religions and all their crazy lore and all that, but like using it pretty effectively to end to a pretty satisfying conclusion, and with a great song and stuff like that. So, I've always liked this band. I've always liked this idea. Obviously, I like cartoon bands. It's like a fascination of mine, and I will continue to. But I think Deathclock is one of the greatest cartoon bands of all time, and I think it's one of probably the greatest achievements someone's made with a cartoon band ever. And I think Brendan Smalls deserves a lot of credit for being able to put out this amount of work with one kind of project here, and all of it is pretty insanely fantastic, from a very synth cinematic score to a kind of very metally dark album that has different shows Deathclock changing to the animation of it all, which is probably some of the best animation this show ever had. You just like, I think, although I did not like the spectacle and the rock opera thing, I just really didn't like it. When Roxo's back, don't worry. But this, for me, makes up for all that, because this is the ultimate epic, ridiculous kind of metal pushing of the whole thing. And if you're like me and you didn't like the opera and could barely get through it because you thought it was so horrible, but I think it is an exact perfect ending for it. And I'm glad Adult Swim and Warner's were allowed them to do that. And I'm glad us as fans get to see how it all ended up and how the Metalocalypse would burn us all down. So if you have seen Metalocalypse, Army of the Doomstar, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.